Hello, I'm Terry David Mulligan, and this is Mulligan Stew, the podcast, music, film, food, and wine. This week, it's music, it's social, it's real, and it's important. We're going to do a special on the protest song. We know it from when Bob Dylan sort of was the guy carrying the flag for the Vietnam War and all of those feelings that happened, social unrest. But here we are today with every headline of everyday conflict, some nasty dialogue going on from some of the strangest places. So what's the music business think about all of this? Where are the singers and songwriters who have something to say to all of us who have a problem with the social unrest? I realize in talking to you that I can't guarantee which side of the fence you're on, but have a listen to the conversations from some of the best singer-songwriters working today who have something to say and who take it to the audience. Stephen Fearing, Joel Plaskett, the Wood Brothers, Leroy Stagger, Ron Sexsmith, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings with Stephen Fearing, Tom Wilson, Colin Linden, producer Bob Rock, and we finish with Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks from the Tedeschi Trucks Band. The Protest Song, 2019 on Mulligan Stew. It's time for a very special segment. It's called The Protest Song. What happened to it? Where is it? What form does it take? Who's singing it? Who's writing it? Will radio play it? And what the heck is going on out there? So, over the next hour, conversations about today's protest music from Stephen Fearing, who started the whole thing off, Joel Plaskett, the Wood Brothers, Leroy Stagger, Ron Sexsmith, Alan Doyle, Bob Rock, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, and Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, the Tedeschi Trucks Band. It all started with Stephen Fearing, who released a single called Blowhard Nation about the politics south of the border, and I had the opportunity to be the first one to play that single. We start with Stephen Fearing. I have found Stephen Fearing, I think is it Freddie Beach?
I'm in Fredericton,
Yeah.
in New Brunswick.
Love that
Nouveau
town.
Brunswick.
Very nice, very nice. I have been given the honor of being the first to play your new single.
Right on.
It's a big deal for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a killer song, Stephen.
I'm glad you like it.
You're
the first person who's given me any feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so tell us how this all came to be.
Peter North, one of your colleagues at CKOA, was kind enough to loan me his cabin for a week in Wells, and I went up there to write. And this was before the Democratic nominees were announced in the U.S. and the Republican nominees, and they were on the hustings trying to become the face of their parties. And so Donald Trump was creating a stir, and the last thing I picked up in Quesnel before I headed into the wilds of Wells, where there's no cell and no Wi-Fi, was a magazine, and he was on the cover. And so over the course of the week of writing, this song came about. Peter's cabin has a part to play in it because his cabin is stocked with all sorts of really great roots music, videos, CDs, and whatnot. And there was a lot of Merle Haggard and Waylon Jennings, and so an element of that kind of came into this song. And once I started writing it, I really had a sense that it was to be playful, and you had to be able to stomp your foot. And so those two things really came together in this tune.
The single is called Blowhard Nation. Blowhard Nation. I was kind of waiting for other tunes to show up on the other side of the border, but I think people are sort of tiptoeing down a very fine line down there. I'm glad that you stepped forward and did this.
Well, it's funny because I played this song at Stan Rogers Folk Festival earlier this summer, and a woman named Christine Lavin approached me after the workshop and said, "Can I record that on my iPhone right now?" And I said, "No, I'm going to put it out as a single." But she said, "There's nobody down here that's really commenting on this. Maybe it's because they're scared. I don't know why. I'm prepared for some hateful emails and things like that because that's the world we live in. But really, I've got an opinion. It's nothing more than that. But I do think that there's a lot of people that have the same opinion, and it's time to air it for sure."
This is Blowhard Nation, Stephen Fearing on Mulligan Stew.
I don't want to live in a blowhard nation with a king and a tinselly crown. Then the whole thing wobbles in the wheels was a weird-looking creature with a rug and a jowly frown. Some of my sinister neighbors are rattling the sabers and the circus is coming to town. It's like a bad tattoo and there's nothing you can do. I could sure use a stiff drink down. Christ Almighty, but there ain't no spine in the words. When they talk of resurrection, they're thinking the election is the saddest thing I ever heard. And the whole debate has a sickening weight, like a steer when a hammer comes down. When you see the cross, well, you better get lost. They're gonna burn something down. I don't wanna live in a blowhard nation with the king in a tinsel crown. When the whole thing wobbles and the wheels come off, you know what's gonna go down. It's the same sad story about the power and the glory and the big shots living uptown. It's the old rat race, so get ready for the chase, 'cause the fat cats are gaining ground. The red line's growing and the headlines crowing. It's as bad as it's ever been. They're all talking while the whole town's walking down the boulevard of broken dreams. And the easy money is as sweet as honey to a head hanging off of a plow. But make no mistake, when they're showing you the cake, they never let you eat it now. With the king in a tinselly crown, when the whole thing wobbles and the wheels come off, you know what's gonna go down. It's the same sad story about the power and the glory and the big shots living uptown. It's the old rat race, so get ready for the chase, 'cause the fat cats are gaining ground. Mistake, when they're showing you the cake, they never let you eat it now.
Stephen Fearing, Blowhard Nation from Every Soul's a Sailor. Just about the exact same time, Joel Plaskett released his album with his father, and there was a track on there called Blank Check. It got my attention. Your album, Solidarity, and a one-off single by Stephen Fearing from Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, literally got to me at the same time. And they were both going in the same direction. Am I right in my assumption that you were listening and being affected by the politics?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we were recording the record in October, like during the last ramp up to the election at the beginning of November. We made it in October, and then we were done the record. It's like, and now Donald Trump is president of the United States. I really hope that the reaction to this is sort of like awakening, maybe, about returning to our senses. The really terrifying thing about it, and you mentioned climate change, is in fact that. I mean, there's all the human rights issues around it, but the climate. You know, if the clock wasn't ticking on heating up the planet, then then hopefully things would, you might have wars, all these things would happen. But
and it is ticking.
But it is ticking. Like, that's what's so remarkable about it, and so what's so I think, frightening about it is the fact that it feels probably, I guess, maybe the way the threat of nuclear annihilation felt in the 50s and 60s.
Well, I was thinking about the protest songs of the 60s. Of course, they had Dylan. They had somebody carrying the flag, and there were lots of people behind him. I kind of wonder how this might show itself, or is there room for a protest movement in the music business, and what the hell would radio do with it?
I think you can get angry. I think you have to get angry. I think there's so much to get angry about. Any experience I've had in terms of trying to change people's minds or bring them around to something has a lot more to do with just sort of trying to set an example. Maybe you're voicing anger, but if you're doing it in a way where there's still kindness in your heart, I like getting along. I like entertaining. I like putting on a show, and so I want to roll all that together and see if it can push at least people into a positive headspace for a couple hours.
This is Mulligan Stew. The special is called The Protest Song. We've talked to Stephen Fearing, Joel Plaskett, and now the Wood Brothers. We're talking to the Wood Brothers backstage at the Imperial Room in Vancouver on Lower Main Street. Chris Wood, his brother Oliver Wood, and Jano Rix from the Planet Zorb. Everything that's happening in the States, we as Canadians watch it like it's happening to us. And it is in its own way. Because there's a division, there's a deep division, and there's no two ways about it. It's either yes or no. And I keep waiting for the music voice to come through, to show itself as a protest or as a voice against Mr. Trump's moves. I know what's going to happen. I just kind of in what form and what shape. Do you get a sense that this may happen?
Well, I think it is happening. I think it's happening. I can't cite any examples, but I know,
Tribe Called Quest record before the election even.
Very strong, statements. I think what interests us more than anything is finding especially, I think music could be a valuable way to get this across, but to find more common ground. It's like one thing to protest, but protest these days, it's immediately pigeonholed and they're just left or right or conservative, and we want to find the common ground and bring things together. Because we hate that everything's so divided. It's terrible, and I really think that the problem lies in the language, really more than anything. That the right and the left have different values, and therefore that are priorities in their lives, and they're both good, and the core values, and therefore they tend to use different language when they express what they feel is important in life. But that's sometimes the only difference, and you could describe the same issue in these two different language value sets, and they sound different, but they're not, and I think that's part of the problem. And so there's common ground. It's just we're in a very strange time period right now, and it's hard to bridge it.
And you as artists, you see those people as an audience. You don't see those lines.
Yeah.
You're still singing your tunes.
Yeah, well, I think it's keeping it that way feels good, because I don't think you necessarily have to be anti this. You need to be pro something, and it feels good, like Chris was saying, to be pro unity and pro, positive stuff that sort of brings people together. And there's time for both.
They are the Wood Brothers in conversation in Vancouver. This is Mulligan Stew. The special is called The Protest Song. We've talked to Stephen Fearing, Joel Plaskett, and the Wood Brothers. Here's some thoughts from Leroy Stagger. I want to talk, Leroy, if I could, about, and I started this conversation with Bob Rock and Ellen Doyle, and we started to talk about the power of music, which you and I were just talking about, but more importantly, started to talk about where are the protest songs, where are the singers, where are the lyrics coming from. Alan said they're coming, and Bob Rock said, well, you have to remember the 60s, radio welcomed that. Radio was wide open to that type of music. How does it find a place now on today's radio landscape? And I'm kind of wondering your thoughts about that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of my upcoming themes on my show is protest music. I think it's still there, but there isn't a place for it on commercial radio, sadly. The Drive-By Truckers addressed that on their latest record with a song called Once They Banned Imagine. And after 9/11, there was a memo that went around Clear Channel or something with songs that they didn't want their hosts to play, and Imagine was on there. And pardon the pun, but could you imagine a world where they banned that song on the radio?
Nope.
It's very strange. And luckily, we both are working with stations that that's not an issue. thank God. But I don't know. It's bizarre. It's like it's going to make way for great art. And I've always kind of had my ear to the ground with political music anyway, whether it be through punk rock or folk music. But I mean, it's there, and like Alan said, it is coming. But it's like, I hate to say it, but it's the dumbing down of society. The powers that be don't want us to think too much.
But Leroy, what about the power of music to change that?
Well, I think I heard a quote recently that somebody said, music doesn't necessarily have the power to change the world, but it has the power to plant seeds in people's minds.
Yep.
To inspire them to change the world. And I think that hits the nail on the head.
What kind of a world are we living in, my friends, when a major radio network forbids their announcers to play John Lennon's Imagine? I can't imagine. My name is Terry David Mulligan. This is Mulligan Stew. The special is called The Protest Song, which is exactly what I wanted to talk to Ron Sexsmith about. Are you expecting to see a sort of a mosaic of songs and songwriters speaking out against what's happening?
I hope so. It's kind of a hard thing to put into words, because obviously in the 60s and that, it was, you had the civil rights movement and all that and the war going on, and so there was certainly lots of material. At this point, it's just this kind of weird, shady thing that's happening. I mean, I think the resistance is getting quite strong, and it's very troubling. But I feel, though, at the same time, it's really energized the opposition or the left, It's not that I have conservative friends, and this seems to go beyond liberal and conservative to this, again, it's a sort of alt-right nationalistic thing that's happening. It's happening in Europe, and it's very disturbing. And see, as a songwriter, it's not always. I find it very hard to write songs, like to write political songs, that don't sound trite or kind of like you're sloganeering or something, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously, Dylan was amazing at writing these songs that were kind of universal. He would write about, like in a song like Blowing in the Wind or something, to say something so powerful in that language, in kind of simple terms. He's even said in interviews he felt like it was just sort of going through him, he was like channeling whatever the mood was. Because he's never been that political of a person in terms of, like, he wasn't like Joan Baez, like, you know what I mean, like picketing or things like that,
Sure.
He was kind of the guy writing the songs, though. There are songwriters addressing all these changes that are going on. But that whole renaissance of that vibe, I don't know if that... It would never come back the same way.
Is it going to be one person? Is it going to be, for example, Springsteen?
Yeah. I don't know if it could be at some, a person like Springsteen at this point in time. Obviously, there was a period where he was considered kind of like the voice of,
Yep.
He was singing about the American experience and all that, the working man and stuff. I don't think if it happened now, it wouldn't come. It'd probably come from some unexpected place,
Exactly. We heard from Stephen Fearing, Joel Plaskett, the Wood Brothers, Leroy Stagger, and Ron Sexsmith. This is Mulligan Stew. We're halfway through our special called The Protest Song. And what's happened to it? Where is it today? How is it being written, sung, played, and heard? And what effect might it have? So we've already talked to Stephen Fearing, Joel Plaskett, the Wood Brothers, Leroy Stagger, and Ron Sexsmith. And coming up, Bob Rock, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, the Tedeschi Trucks Band. But we start with this conversation with Alan Doyle at the Warehouse in Vancouver. My first question was about the possible protest tracks on the new album from he and Bob Rock called A Week at the Warehouse. I don't suppose there's anything in the music that would reflect what's going on in the United States on these days?
Not directly, no, but I haven't considered it that way, to be honest with you, because for me, there's so much question about the U.S. and what's happening politically and all that. We had this conversation, and I had this epiphany. I've had this moment of clarity where I went, what can turn this around? Because right now it's just people yelling at one another.
a great song or a great series of songs dealing with the uncertainty could do it. There's power in music.
Yeah, and I think a rally cry is called for, right? And that could end up being a song that someone has that people get around or whatever. But I mean, the thing that I keep thinking and wondering about it all is like, guys, if you don't like the president of the United States, that doesn't mean you don't like the United States. Yeah. And by the way, if I was an American citizen, for example, I'd be like, guys, that guy doesn't get to define who I am. That girl, whoever gets in that job, doesn't necessarily define who I am or what I'm going to do in my community. Like, I'm getting up tomorrow, I'm going to go do my same job. I'm going to go down and do charity work down the road, and I'm going to help the people across the street when there's a fire. And one of the things I think about growing up in Newfoundland is it gives you this sort of this notion that everything is kind of yours to fix, and it's like no one's coming to fix this for us. We have to do this on our own. So if you're discontented with the government in Ottawa, for example, right? Well, or you're in love with the government in Ottawa, well, sure, what difference does it make? They're not coming to, when Dougie's house catches on fire in Betty Harbor, there's nobody coming from Ottawa to fix it. So it's still, if I was an American citizen, that's what I would say. I'd say, look, guys, it's still your country. It's still your neighborhood. It's still your town. It's still your good works to do. It's still that, that's all you. That got nothing to do with anybody else. Make it your own and keep it your own.
The unmistakable accented voice and thoughts of Alan Doyle. In the studio with him that day at the warehouse was Bob Rock, musician, singer, songwriter, and world-class producer. There will be a pushback from the music community and the film community and the arts community reflecting the unease that's happening in the United States. Of course, you live in Hawaii and you're Canadian. I keep trying to figure out how music will answer what people are feeling right now. Are you expecting that to be pushed back?
Well, having lived through the 60s and loving so much of the 60s and the 70s, there was a big presence of people that actually were the voice of what we were all feeling. And it does seem like it's slightly it's kind of absent. Yeah. And I'm not so sure that's necessarily that people aren't doing it. It's that it's not heard. And I think the radio and culture at that time was growing, and there was more freedom. Yeah. I think everything's controlled now, so maybe we're not hearing what people think. It's just such a weird time. I don't have the answer, but I'm actually surprised that it hasn't reached people, the stuff that is being made, because there's a lot of people that feel strongly about this.
I think it's coming. I just don't know in what form.
Yeah, it's hard to know, but I think especially the events since Mr. Trump was elected, I think now that we're starting to see what he's doing, I think it's definitely, people can speak out, and musicians should, and artists, all artists, everybody should.
Thanks for your work.
Thanks, Harry.
This is Mulligan Stew and the CKUA Radio Network. We are almost done our special on the protest song. Is it here? Is it not? Will radio play it? Do people care? Do the artists want to get involved? We have 2 more interviews for you. One from Blackie and the Rodeo Kings backstage at the Commodore Ballroom. And the last one, Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks from the Tedeschi Trucks Band have a lot to add to this conversation, and they'll finish off the show. I'm Terry David Mulligan. Here's a conversation backstage at the Commodore with Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. I started a conversation over at Warehouse Studios a couple of months ago with Alan Doyle and Bob Rock about where was the protest song in this day and age, spinning off your Blowhard Nation, Stephen. Yeah. Right? Can song have the strength that it used to have in the 60s to change the social climate around us?
And more than the song, the singers have to be more aware of the job that they have on this planet is to make love the focus of everything. And you know what? We can name names, and we can use CNN cliches, and we can hate, try to fight hate with hate, but we can only fight hate with love. And as artists, it's really what our job, to me, is to do, is to go out and give people the confidence back in themselves that this world is taking out of them, that they have the power to love. And trust me, you know what? I am guilty. Since I got home from touring the States in May, CNN has not been off my team. It's on
Yeah.
24 hours a day. So let me speak as somebody who's completely guilty of indulging himself in the whirlpool.
I think the most powerful protest you can write in a song is being affirmative about your refusal to succumb to a lack of humanity. The greatest protest song, and not that it's that great a song, but I think the most effective protest song I ever wrote is a song that we recorded called Let's Frolic. Every act that you undertake in your life is a measurement on one level or other of faith. And so how much faith you have, how much faith you put in, how much faith is tested by your actions, all of that is a way of waking up the world.
Colin, you're living there. So you're surrounded by it. What's the feeling like down there right now?
It's a crazy time in this world. It's as the great philosopher Willie Dixon once said, through the mouthpiece of my favorite soloist in human history, Little Walter Jacobs, this is a crazy, mixed up world.
This special is called The Protest Song. It's about everything that's swirling around us. If you listen to Mulligan Stew for any length of time, you'll know that I have a thing about Tedeschi Trucks Band, Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks and their band and what they stand for. I mean, it's an honest band playing honest music. But I also knew that they had something to say about what was going on around them in the United States. They live in the Deep South. They are surrounded by, and their band is a representation of America. Black, white, male, female, all ages, all sexes. Here's a conversation with Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks. Here's what I love about the band, and I know that you do too. It's men, it's women, black, white, working together, jazz, funk, blues, rock. It's American music is what it is.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, I want to watch for the music that gets made during this period. And will there be a voice for what people were feeling? So if in fact your band is America, how did it affect the music that was being written and formed and the band itself? Sue?
Well, during Let Me Get By, I mean, a lot of this stuff was kind of amping up.
Yeah.
And some of the songs on that record, you know, we kind of leave it open to the listener.
On Inauguration Day, we played in D.C. And we opened up with Isn't It a Pity? And then
we opened up with Freedom Highway.
Oh, you're right, Freedom Highway.
The Staples.
That's what it was.
Staple Singers. And then we played Isn't It a Pity right after.
Yeah. So
and the whole place, like, cheered and cried, and they all totally got it.
Chicago as well. We were there right around that time. And you can feel a sense. Lyrics take on a different meaning. You know, now is when music and the arts are hugely important. Journalism, all of these things are kind of under fire. So you got to step up and say something.
All the things that separate us from the apes are under fire. I mean, everything that makes us so beautiful and special, how we can work together and communicate. You know, how to have fresh, clean air and water, and how to strive for, you know, arts and all this beautiful stuff and creativity. It's like, why are we shooting that down? I thought that was a good thing.
That was a good thing.
I mean, I think in the long run, it's probably a good wake-up call for everybody. You know, we get complacent and we get soft as in the States. You know, if things don't move quick enough, we decide that none of it matters. When it actually really does.
Well,
progress can be slow, but if you're moving in the right direction, you need to probably stay the course, and you got to put people in place that think and care a little bit. When we were putting the song list together for the live record, there was a few comments from people that I played it for, like, are we sure we want to start it with a really crazy avant-garde tenor sax solo? And I was like, you know what?
Yes.
We need angry, crazy Africa right now more than ever. That's exactly how we need to start the show. So don't know what it means is maybe a good one, too.
My thanks to Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, Stephen Fearing, Tom Wilson, Colin Linden, Bob Rock, and Alan Doyle, Ron Sexsmith, Leroy Stagger, the Wood Brothers, Joel Plaskett, and we started with Stephen Fearing. That story will continue to unfold. We'll check what's going on from time to time. Everyone at Mulligan Stew, the podcast, would like to thank Stephen Fearing, Joel Plaskett, the Wood Brothers, Leroy Stagger, Ron Sexsmith, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, Bob Rock, Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, for joining us on the first of several specials about the protest song. today, 2019, and heading into 2020. Where is it? Where will it come from? Who's speaking it? And are we listening? And who's playing it, frankly? And I promise, down the road, we'll keep asking these same questions of other artists, and then we'll put them together into another podcast. Coming up, interviews with Bobby Rush, the R&B legend, Augie Myers, also a legend from the Sir Douglas Quintet, from Bob Dylan. And we're heading into the Edmonton Folk Festival, and we'll be talking to Harp and Axe, the Harpoonist and the Axe Murderer, Donovan Woods, Bahamas, Jim Cuddy from Blue Rodeo, Clem Brio from Oakland, and we're hoping to run across Dan Mangan and Brandy Carlisle. This is Mulligan's to the Podcast. You can subscribe at Spotify, Google Play, or Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening. Check us out, mulliganstew.ca.